Welcome to session number 9. Glad you're back.
Yes, another exciting episode of Secrets of the Mahatma Letters. Where are we?
Here. What time is it?
There you go. All right, we are here. What time is it? It is now.
Now. And what's missing?
Not
Our
a damn
bookmark.
thing.
No, yeah, not a damn thing. Exactly.
All right.
Letter 13.
Number 12, session 9.
12. Oh.
12, yeah. We just finished 11 in our last session. Before we jump into this letter, though, I want to give a little more background on our two Englishmen, Alan Octavian Hume and Alfred Percy Sinnett. Quite the names. Alan Octavian Hume was born in Scotland in 1829. But we need to go back a little bit farther. His father was named Joseph Hume and was very well known all over England. He was born in 1877, so 1 year after the Declaration of Independence. And he wasn't born in a family that was particularly wealthy, but they weren't poor either. He was able to go to medical school at the University of Edinburgh. And after that, he joined the military and then had several other enterprises. He worked as a physician or a physician's assistant at times. And somehow, by the time he was around 30 years old, he had accumulated savings, which today it was 40,000 pounds in 1808. 40,000 pounds, which today would be the equivalent of about $5.5 million at around 30 years old. So he had some real talent. He obviously was quite brilliant. So then what he decided to do was to go into politics. And he was kind of one of those people that, an iconoclast. He was one who was going to shake up the system. And fortunately, he was on the side of the working class and the little people, basically. He had spent enough time in the military that he appreciated the everyday people who actually make things work. He even proposed while he became a member of Parliament and worked on behalf of the laboring people. He even proposed a bill that would make it easier for the soldiers in the ranks to rise up through the ranks. Up until that time, all of the officers came from the genteel section of society, the wealthy people who could afford great educations. It was never rising up through the ranks. It was people coming from outside put in the positions of the major officers of the military. So he actually did a lot of good for the common people. And he also made a lot of enemies in the process, obviously, because he was going against the conservatives in many regards. The one place where he was extremely conservative was in finance. He wanted the government to be responsible in their use of taxes. And he insisted that they provide reports and accountability for their expenditures. So some of the wealthy people didn't like that too much. But he was a mover and a shaker. And so his son, Alan Octavian, took after him.
So just so we're clear, up until now, you've been describing his father.
This is his father.
Not Hume.
Joseph Hume.
Okay.
But the son was very similar. He was well educated. He was also somebody who didn't just go along with those who were in charge of government or any other thing. He questioned everything, as we know. So let's read a little bit about Allen Hume now that we know who his father was and where his inclinations came from. So he was born June 6th, 1829. He was about 10 and a half years older than Sinnott. He was born in Scotland, and he became fairly young a British administrator in India. Now, this is from Encyclopedia Britannica, just a short excerpt. And he became, as we found out last time, one of the leading spirits in the founding of the Indian National Congress, a political party that still exists today. He was the son of the radical, they call him radical politician, Joseph Hume. He entered the Indian civil service in Bengal in 1849 after serving as magistrate, meaning a judge, in the district of Etawah at the time of the Indian Mutiny of 1857 and 58. We heard about that last time. During that mutiny, he took the side of the local people, the indigenous people, which probably didn't make him very popular among the English. He was assigned to the Board of Revenue in the northwestern provinces after that. And in 1870 through 79, he worked for the central government of India as secretary in the Revenue and Agricultural Department. So basically, as a cabinet member, he was the secretary of both revenue and agriculture. His views favoring greater participation for Indians in governmental affairs created difficulties, and he returned to provincial administration. He made, just like his father, he made enemies everywhere he went. On his retirement from the civil service in 1882, so that was during the period of these Mahatma letters, he involved himself in political activities aimed at giving Indians a more democratic, representational government, and was one of the conveners of the first session of the Indian National Congress held at Bombay in 1885. He served as its General Secretary of the Congress for its first 22 years. So that's A.O. Hume, one of the candidates for chairmanship that KH was considering. Now let's look at Alfred Percy Sinnott. Quite a different life he had. He was born January 18th, 1840. So when he first started communicating with KH, he was 40 years old. He was young. He had been married about 10 years, I believe, approximately. And they had a 3-year-old son, Denny. KH, will find out later, was he paid a lot of attention to all of Sinnott's family, his wife and his son. And we see a lot of affection on both sides. His father died when he was around 4 or 5 years old, and his mother was always in poor health. They had almost no money growing up. But he obviously showed some kind of promise because he was able to enroll in what we would call a prep school today. And that was a great opportunity. He was enrolled as what they call an exhibition student, which is a weird term, but it basically means on scholarship. And the scholarship or grant could be because of academic prowess or because of financial need. Whatever it may be, he was able to get a fairly good education. He excelled in most courses, including mathematics and language. The one place that he didn't excel was Latin. Every educated person in that time, whether they were in the UK or in America, was expected to learn Latin.
Wow. Conversational Latin? I didn't know there was such a thing.
It's classic. It's classical Latin and classical Greek were the two ancient languages they were supposed to learn. And unfortunately, he didn't do well at all in Latin. And he, being a bit of a smart aleck himself, decided one day to write something rude on the blackboard about his Latin professor. And that didn't go over too well. The school he went to, which was called the London University School in Gower Street in London, was one of the few that didn't believe in corporal punishment for pranks like that. And if he had been in almost any other school, he would have been whipped. And that would be the end of it. So instead of corporal punishment, he was given 500 lines of Latin to memorize. And so every day when he went to school, they would shut him up in a room while the others were having class elsewhere. And he was supposed to memorize these 500 lines. Well, he obviously didn't make much effort at it. He didn't get anywhere. So after several days of that, his mother said, okay, that's enough. We're pulling him out of the school. And that was the end of his schooling. So what happened after that? He became an apprentice as a mechanical draftsman. I don't know if it was for an architectural firm or what it was, but he was a mechanical draftsman for mechanical drawing. And he only stayed with that for a while because he was so young. I think it was around 18 at this point, maybe even less. He was doing very well. He was really good at his work. But he was upset because the older draftsmen who did the exact same work were getting paid far more than he was. And he's like, this isn't fair. So he's like, I'm out of here.
I wonder if he was somewhat of a prodigy since he was so young.
I suspect he was. He achieved quite a bit, as we will see. So he left that to work as a sub-editor on The Globe, a London newspaper. So a sub-editor for someone his age was pretty amazing. He, during this time, fell in love with a German girl who was studying in London, and he was smitten with her. She actually liked him a lot, and so she was going to go home to Germany and try to convince her father to allow her to marry this young man in London. Once she left London, he didn't hear anything from her. And he was beside himself. So he finally wrote a letter to her father. And he wrote back, basically said, forget you ever knew this girl. Nothing is ever going to happen. He obviously thought he didn't have any future and that he wasn't a proper companion for his little girl. So he obsessed about that for a long time, and it affected his work. He ended up losing his job because of his inattention to what he was supposed to do. He then was hired as a lead writer for the Manchester Guardian, which we know today simply as The Guardian. And it was an influential newspaper even in those days. This was, I don't remember I guess it would, well, it would have been like in 1862 and 63. So he was like 23 years old approximately, working as a lead writer for the Manchester Guardian. He moved back to London in 1864, and then a year later, he was appointed to be the chief editor of the Hong Kong Daily Press. He moved to Hong Kong,
Okay.
which was, of course, under British rule for 99 years, as we know. We don't know much about what his life was in Hong Kong, except that he learned how to play poker.
In Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong.
How about that?
Now, poker, as we know it, was not invented because it was really an ancient Persian game, card game, the earliest versions of it. But it became very popular in Missouri and along the Mississippi River area, where the gamblers kind of congregated along that part of America. And somehow it ended up being played a lot in Hong Kong. He was in Hong Kong for 3 years, and then he returned to London in 1868. But this time he returned via Japan and the USA. So he made a trip completely around the world, going and coming.
Well, I wonder if that was his first time in the United States.
As I'm pretty sure it was. He was only, 28 years old at the time. He stopped for 10 days in Salt Lake City, got an interview with Brigham Young, and was very impressed with these Mormons and this state of theirs. They had 100,000 followers.
He was interviewing Brigham Young for the newspaper.
Well, he wasn't associated with any particular newspaper at this time, but he had worked for 3 different newspapers. So he was a newspaper writer and editor. So I'm sure that's how he got that interview, was because he said, hey, I can get you some free advertising, basically.
Nice to see that sometime.
Then after that, he finished, and he crossed the United States in stagecoach. The trains there weren't enough rail lines at the time, so it was by stagecoach. While he was in Hong Kong, he saved up money, and he had about 800 pounds, which was the equivalent of about $100,000 today. He got married in 1870 when he was 30, and became editorial writer for the Evening Standard, another newspaper in London. Around the middle of 1872, when he was 32 years old, he was offered the editor job of the Pioneer in Allahabad, and that was a cushy job. Anyone would have jumped at that. So he and Patience, who he called Patty, moved to India, to Allahabad, and that's where they were when HPB and Alcott met them. He saved up his money while he was there because he had the right to 30 days vacation every year. And so he saved up that time for 3 years so that he and his wife could travel back to London for a visit. Because as we know, it took a month travel each way, and so that only gave them 1 month in London. But while he was there...
Well, if it's 30 days vacation?
But 3 years he had saved up, so he had 3 months of vacation coming. And so while he was in London, while they both were in London, he discovered this spiritualist movement that was going on, that everybody was all excited about. So he and his wife attended seances with the medium Mrs. Guppy, who produced phenomena that he was thoroughly convinced was real, and he was just amazed at some of the things that she was able to do. And so when Alcott and HPB moved to India, he assumed that they were also part of this spiritualist movement. And he immediately wrote to them, said, if you're ever in Allahabad, come and be our guests. We would be delighted to have you come and visit. And they did. After several months, in 1879, they went to visit them for a few weeks. And then again, they did the same in 1880, but this time in Shimla, their summer home up in the mountains where it's cooler. And this is where the letters started in 1880. Their son Denny was born in 1877. He was not robust. He never had good health. And they were always concerned about him, and so was K.H. And that's what brings us up to the current now. He's already received 11 letters that we have covered, and now we're going to start covering letter number 12, which was received at Allahabad on December 10th, 1880. So I'm going to have Paul pick it up from there.
Letter 12, Allahabad, December 10th, 1880. No, you do not, quote, write too much. I am only sorry to have so little time at my disposal. Hence, I find myself unable to answer you as speedily as I otherwise would. Of course, I have to read every word you write. Otherwise, I would make a fine mess of it.
So he obviously had asked, do you actually have to read every word I write, or do you just kind of get it by osmosis?
And whether it be through my physical or spiritual eyes, the time required for it is practically the same. As much may be said of my replies, for whether I precipitate or dictate them or write my answers myself, the difference in time saved is very small. I have to think it over, to photograph every word and sentence carefully in my brain before it can be repeated by, quote, precipitation. We have to first arrange our sentences and impress every letter that is to appear on paper in our minds before it becomes fit to be read. For the present, that is all I can tell you. When science will have learned more about the mystery of the lithobiblion and how the impress of leaves comes originally to take place on stones, then will I be able to make you better understand the process. But you must know and remember one thing. We but follow and servilely copy nature in her works. This is the first time we're hearing.
Yes, exactly.
The process of how they make these letters appear. Oh.
So servilely means without deviation. We have to follow it precisely. And he says time and again, there is nothing magical. We can't go against the laws of nature. We work with the laws of nature. We just happen to know them better than scientists do.
It's interesting that he says once our science progresses, then you'll understand how this process works.
Exactly. And I've tried to figure that out, but we all know that the impress of leaves, as far as fossils, it seems pretty straightforward. You know, you have mud or clay that is wet. The impress is made in it.
There's pressure. And
then the mud dries and eventually becomes stone. So there's something about that, a hint in there somewhere, but I can't figure it out.
And lithobiblion.
Yeah, that's lithobiblion.
A book scholar, something?
No, well, I think it has something to do specifically with plant fossils. But I looked it up, but I don't remember what it said about it. One other thing, though, he's saying that he has to think every word in his brain and photograph it, sort of like the old word processors where you would type it on a machine that looked just like a typewriter, and it had a memory, and then you could push a button and it would actually print it.
Yes.
So that's what it sounds like. And it sounds tedious, but there's something else to this, because there are letters where the person would ask the question, and 10 minutes later, a reply of a couple of pages long would appear. So that doesn't fit in with the description that he's giving. So all we can do is keep that in mind, and then later, when we get more information, we'll try to reassess this.
There are probably several ways that they do it. Yeah. Okay, moving along. No, we need no longer argue about the unfortunate question of a, quote, day with Madame Blavatsky. It is ever more useless, since you say that you have no right to crush your uncivil opponents in the Pioneer, even in your own defense, because your proprietors object to the mention of occultism altogether. As they are Christians, it is no wonder.
All right, this is something that has come up just recently. The original owners of the Pioneer, Sinnett's bosses, were okay with his interest in the spiritualists and in theosophy. But the newspaper was sold, and the new owners were Protestants, and they weren't quite as interested in this phenomena that he was so interested in. So there was beginning to be some discord among them.
My dear friend, I have my, quote, proprietors also. For reasons best known to themselves, they have put their foot down on the idea of teaching isolated individuals. Ah, interesting. I will correspond with you and give you proofs from time to time of my existence and presence. To sit with your lady is more than useless. Your magnetisms are too similar, and you will get nothing.
All right, so he had some experience with the spiritualist movement.
Oh, that's who he was referring to, your lady.
The wife, his wife.
Oh, he's referring to Patience, okay.
Because Sinnett obviously had proposed, well, maybe my wife and I can kind of develop our intuition, our ability to receive information. Because remember, they're trying to find a replacement for HPB. Someone who is that they're able to communicate with directly. And so they're both trying to come up with solutions. And Sinnett's saying, well, maybe if my wife and I, since, we have the two poles of female, male, if we sit and meditate together, we will be able to become more receptive, more sensitive to the vibrations. And KH says, no, your vibrations are way too similar. It's actually not going to work.
I will translate my essay and send it to you as soon as I can. Your idea of corresponding with your friends and fellows is the next best thing to do. But do not fail to write to Lord Lindsay. I am a little, quote, too hard on Hume, you say. Am I? He is a highly intellectual and, I confess, a spiritual nature too. Yet he is every bit of him, quote, Sir Oracle.
Sir Oracle refers to a know-it-all.
Okay.
It was a character that appeared in literature from time to time. It means somebody who thinks he knows everything but doesn't.
Sir Oracle. It may be that it is the very exuberance of that great intellect which seeks issue through every chink and never loses an opportunity to relieve the fullness of the brain which overflows with thought. Wow. Placing before us a mirror which reflects us as he finds us in his own fertile imagination. He says, now, you moldy relics of a moldy past, look at yourselves as you really are. A very excellent man, our friend, Mr. Hume, but utterly unfit for molding into an adept. Yikes.
All right, so this is confirmation of what we've seen for the last few videos. He's saying that Hume has all of the qualifications except for his attitude.
And humility and
He's not receptive at all to anything new. So utterly unfit for molding into an adept. So we're getting some clues here about what if we want to ever become an adept ourselves, we're going to have to do this same things. We're going to have to go through the same process. And being receptive and being willing to admit when you're wrong and to not be a know-it-all is one of the first steps that you have to take. Without that, it's useless.
If we're ever too attached to what we think we know as truth, we're not going to progress, and we certainly won't become a chela nor an adept.
Yeah, and we'll see that he'll spell it out a little more clearly in another letter, number 15, I think it is.
As little and far less than yourself does he seem to realize our real object in the formation of an Anglo-Indian branch. The truths and mysteries of occultism constitute a body of the highest spiritual importance, at once profound and practical for the world at large. Yet it is not as a mere addition to the tangled mass of theory or speculation in the world of science that they are being given to you, but for their practical bearing on the interests of mankind. The terms, quote, unscientific, impossible, hallucination, impostor, have hitherto been used in a very loose, careless way, as implying that in the occult phenomena there is something either mysterious and abnormal or a premeditated imposture.
And those are all words that Hume has used to describe KH.
So rude. Speaking to an adept like that. And this is why our chiefs have determined to shed upon a few recipient minds more light upon the subject, and to prove to them that such manifestations are as reducible to law as the simplest phenomena of the physical universe. The wiseacres say, quote, the age of miracles is past. But we answer, it never existed. While not unparalleled or without their counterpart in universal history, these phenomena must and will come with an overpowering influence upon the world of skeptics and bigots. They have to prove both destructive and constructive. Destructive in the pernicious errors of the past, in the old creeds and superstitions which suffocate in their poisonous embrace almost all of mankind. But they are constructive of new institutions of a genuine, practical brotherhood of humanity, where all will become co-workers of nature, will work for the good of mankind with and through the higher planetary spirits, the only, quote, spirits we believe in. Ooh, wow.
All right.
That's a big one.
Let's take a look at that. He says, first of all, that in order to lay down something new, you have to destroy the old. You can't just add on to it or adapt it. For example, when you have big earthquakes, especially in older countries, we see the buildings that look pretty good from the outside because they've modernized them and put a new facade on them. But when the earthquake comes along and they are really tested, what do we see? All the crappy construction underneath that is old and fragile and about to fall apart. And that's exactly why it did fall apart. So you can't just patch up things and make it look good from the outside. It isn't going to work. Get rid of it, tear it down, have an implosion, and then build new from there. And then the other thing that he was saying was the only spirits that we work with are the planetary spirits. Now, when he says the only spirits we work with, he's referring to spiritualism, right, whose spirits are on the astral plane. Mm-hmm. Well, planetary spirits, let's see what planetary spirits are. Here's another book for serious students of the Mahatma Letters. This is written by a friend of ours, Joy Mills. who died in 1995, what am I saying? Who died in 2015 at the age of 95. She wrote Reflections on an Ageless Wisdom. And it's a letter-by-letter analysis of the Mahatma letters, but from a very different point of view from what we're doing this series on. However, you can get a lot of good information from this book. For example, on this letter number 12, where he mentions planetary spirits, she puts in here a description that HPB wrote. And this is from the Theosophical Glossary, one of the last books that she wrote in her life. And she's defining planetary spirits as primarily the rulers or governors of the planets. Primarily the rulers or governors of the planets. And then she says, as our Earth has its hierarchy of terrestrial planetary spirits from the highest to the lowest plane, so has every other heavenly body. In occultism, however, the term planetary spirit is generally applied only to the 7 highest hierarchies corresponding to the Christian archangels. These have all passed through a stage of evolution corresponding to the humanity of Earth, but on other worlds. In long past cycles, our Earth, being as yet only in its 4th round, is far too young to have produced high planetary spirits. The highest planetary spirit ruling over any globe is, in reality, the personal God of that planet, and far more truly its overruling providence than the self-contradictory, infinite, personal deity of modern Christianity. So this is what Theosophists would consider a personal God.
Why does it refer to personal God as planetary ruler, though?
Because she's saying that if you want to call anything a God, that would be what Christians would consider a personal God.
That knows you and you can pray to.
Right. She said this would be the closest analogy, but this is reality. This is actually a being who in ages so far back that no one would remember, like billions of years, went through the same steps that we are going through now, and who is now the individual in charge of our own planet. Now, obviously, there's another one in charge of our solar system, but this would be the one in charge of the planet Earth.
Was she making a separation between that individual and the planetary spirits, or is that what she's referring to
that
as
is the planetary spirit?
She also said that we have not produced our own planetary spirits, but
no, we're not anywhere close to that.
But the closest thing we've produced to it was
the Buddha.
She started to say that, but I thought that's where she said the personal God.
No.
Okay. She said that Earth did produce the highest that Earth has produced, and that's where she said
Well, let's see, what exactly did she say? Our Earth, being as yet only in its 4th round, is far too young to have produced high planetary spirits. The highest planetary spirit ruling over our globe is that could be considered a personal God, etc., etc. So she isn't really referring to anything else. She's strictly referring to this concept of the planetary spirit.
And she said that it could be, the planetary spirits could be equated to archangels in
right.
Christianity.
Exactly. So those they're rulers in and of themselves. They're very highly developed beings.
Yeah.
And we learn time and again that any being that has any degree of rulership or sovereignty over anything has at some point gone through the human kingdom.
Of course.
Even devas, angels.
Or the equivalent to it on a different world somewhere.
Right. So even the highest angels have all also been human at some point.
I'll clarify something because I'm sure some of our viewers might ask. You mentioned billions and billions of years ago. Now, when I was first learning about all this, I was the question asker, and someone might think, well, billions of years ago, how could an archangel have gone through what we're going through billions of years ago if our planet isn't even that old? Well, but the universe itself might not be that old, but remember, it's always cyclical. And just because a universe bangs into existence and then at some point cools down and disintegrates or contracts, that doesn't mean that's the only universe that ever was and ever will be. And consciousness has existed prior to the Big Bang and will exist after our universe. And the same consciousness is recycle.
Recycle, yeah, exactly. No, as far as we know, there never has been non-existence.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Even the adepts say, obviously, they're in contact with beings who are more advanced than they are. But at one point, KH says, even those with whom we are in contact cannot see any end anywhere.
Wow.
So, as Paul was describing, yes, we have these, and this is all part of the ancient wisdom teaching, is that in these cycles, there is a Big Bang, so to speak, an expansion for millions, actually billions of years, and then a contraction, coming back again. And that's what is termed a pralaya. That's a resting phase. Part of the cycle, you go through the expansion, the growth in consciousness, and then you get the contraction and back into nothingness or apparent nothingness, total, and it doesn't completely stop, because if all motion stopped, then it would disappear. So it's like a resting phase, and then all of a sudden it wakes up and starts again.
And to our viewers, by the way, that's just a big scaled up version of our own reincarnation cycle.
And our daily cycle.
And our daily cycle. When you go to sleep at night, that's our pralaya.
We die every night.
And then come 5, 6, 7 in the morning, there's a big bang and we open our eyes and we're like, let's go, let's get it again.
And it takes time to get back up to speed, doesn't it?
A few minutes sometimes. If we're born, when we're born each time through the birth canal and the doctor spanks us on our butt, that's the Big Bang for the next, for that stage of incarnate, for that universe, our own little universe. And then there's a constriction at the end of their physical life, is there not? So then there's a rest.
They point this out again and again. There is nothing new under the sun. Yeah. All of this has been done millions, billions of times before. And it all goes through this whole cycle of birth, expansion, gaining new experience, contraction, synthesizing the experience that has been learned, and then starting again.
I'm glad we digressed on that for a while. Coming back to where KH says these planetary spirits are the only, quote, spirits we believe in, I think he means two things there. He's speaking in jest, sort of, about the spiritualists, but he's also perhaps talking about religion's God as well.
Mm-hmm. No, it's important because we need to try to figure out where these concepts came from in the originally, because there is validity to them. It's just that they've been twisted around over millions of years by individuals who use it for personal gain. ooh, here's something that people are really attracted to. How can I make money off of this? Or how can I use that to become more powerful?
A personal God who listens to your prayers. Well, the concept started in its pure form, and then it was changed to a wise man in the clouds who listens to you and who sees you when you're naughty and you're nice. And
if you give us enough money, we can guarantee that he's not going to punish you forever by sending you to hell.
Planetary spirits, there's more on this where it came from too.
Yes.
Should we keep going?
Yes.
Okay. So planetary spirits are the only spirits we believe in. And I guess I should add one more quick thing. Some spiritual traditions do have names for the individuals and beings. I don't know if we're going to be talking about that in any letters, but
we might.
Phenomenal elements previously undreamt of will soon begin manifesting themselves day by day with constantly increasing force and disclose at last the secrets of their mysterious workings. Plato was right. Ideas rule the world.
All right, I'm going to point out something because this seems pretty normal and unassuming. This phrase is going to cause an enormous amount of problems. Not now, we won't see it for a couple of years now. But just keep this in mind that he's going to be accused of plagiarism.
KH or Sinnett?
KH.
Oh.
Well, Sinnett, because the people who accused him didn't believe he was actually communicating with anyone. So he's the one that's going to get the brunt of this.
Oh my goodness. Ideas rule the world, and as men's minds will receive new ideas, laying aside the old and no longer useful ones, the world will advance. Mighty revolutions will spring from them. Creeds and even powers will crumble before their onward march, crushed by the irresistible force. It will be just as impossible to resist their influx when the time comes as to stay the progress of the tide. But all this will come on gradually, and before it comes, we have a duty set before us. That of sweeping away as much as possible the worthless remains left to us by our pious forefathers. He's so eloquent. New ideas have to be planted on clean places, for these ideas touch upon the most momentous subjects. It is not physical phenomena, but these universal ideas that we study, and to comprehend the former, we have to first understand the latter. They touch man's true position in the universe in relation to his previous and future births, his origin and ultimate destiny, the relation of the mortal to the immortal, of the temporary to the eternal, of the finite to the infinite, ideas larger, grander, more comprehensive, recognizing the universal reign of immutable law, unchanging and unchangeable, in regard to which there is only an eternal now. Boom! While to uninitiated mortals, time is past or future as related to their finite existence on this material speck of dirt. This is what we study, and what many have solved. That's a mic drop moment by KH right there. I love it.
So now we see what
this is amazing.
HPB was referring to when she said these teachings lead to the very heart of the universe. That's about as concise as you can get as for explaining.
He's getting very passionate.
What he just was referring to was, of course, the cycles of the yugas. And he knows that each one has a certain prescribed role to play, and that certain types of events will happen during that yuga. And these yugas are very long.
There are four cycles, four main cycles in an entire cycle of the rise and fall of a civilization, we can say, or a planet. The yugas, the Satya Yuga being on the top, the Kali Yuga on the bottom, and then I believe they're called Dwapara, if I'm not mistaken.
And the four yugas together form a Mahayuga, which consists of 4.3 million years.
Million.
Million.
Okay.
The Kali Yuga itself is the shortest one, and that's 432,000 years.
And that is the nadir of the cycle.
Yes,
the
and
Kali.
That's the one we're in right now. Ooh. We'll cover this a little more in detail very soon. But just to get used to the idea of these huge, long cycles that every planetary system goes through.
Some of our viewers probably recognize the name Kali. It's one of the Hindu deities. And
Right, and this is the dark part of the cycle. We're in the dark part of the age of enlightenment was way in the past, and now we're in basically the middle ages of our world cycle. The other thing is, he says, there is only an eternal now. Now, where have we heard that before?
I don't know, maybe in our book and maybe in Eckhart Tolle as well.
Eckhart Tolle, yes, the eternal now. So, yeah, he brings this up a few times. There is no past, there is no future, there is only an eternal now. And the more we ponder on that and contemplate it and comprehend it, the better off we are. Because, just quickly, the past is what? Whatever we think it is. And invariably, it's incorrect. Even when we have outside sources to refer to, it's still going to be incorrect. It's never going to be really, really good. Not for us, but for highly advanced individuals like the Mahatmas, it's probably far better. The future is nothing but a dream. It doesn't exist. So the past doesn't exist because it's basically in our head. The future doesn't exist because it's going to depend on what we actually do. And what we're intending to do now is almost certainly not going to happen. So whatever we imagine almost invariably does not happen quite the way we think it's going to. So if we don't have a past and we don't really know what the future is going to be, we only have this very moment in time, and it passes that quickly, and that's gone. So that's why wherever we are right now, this is life. This is life. This moment in time. Profound, but I didn't invent it. All right.
Some of our viewers are going to say, well, how do you plan for your appointment next week? How do you function in society?
Well, that's called clock time.
Clock time.
Yes.
It's not psychological time.
Right.
All right, the last paragraph of letter 12. Here we go. And now it is your choice to decide which you will have, the highest philosophy or simple exhibitions of occult powers. Wow. Of course, this is certainly not the last word between us, and you will have time to think about it, to think it over. The chiefs want a, quote, brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity started, an institution which would make itself known throughout the world and attract the attention of the highest minds. I will send you my essay. Will you be my co-worker and patiently wait for minor phenomena? I think I foresee an answer. At all events, the holy lamp of spiritual light is burning in you, however dimly, and there is hope for you and also for me. Yes, put yourself in search of natives if there are no English people to be had. But do you think the spirit and power of persecution is gone from this enlightened age? Time will tell. Meanwhile, being human, I have to rest. I took no sleep for over 60 hours.
Now
Ever yours truly, Kuthumi.
This is one more of those statements that I kind of question. I can't imagine someone not sleeping for 60 hours. I mean, that's almost 3 days. So is he exaggerating? Maybe not. They have abilities that we don't have and that we're not aware of. So it's possible that he may have allowed his physical body to rest and yet kept mentally active during that time. I don't know, but it's one of those things that I try to just keep in mind in case somewhere down the line I see something else that may answer the conundrum, the question that I have about it. All right. That's the end of letter 12. Let's continue with letter number 13.
Received January 30th, 1881. Enclosed in a letter from HPB from Bombay, letter number 12, had been received 7 weeks before.
Yeah, we're beginning to see some gaps. Up until now, they're fairly consistent. Not too many days go by from one letter to the next. But now it's been 7 weeks that he has not received a letter. So this is the first one since then. And
January 30th.
Now we're in 1881. So in the meantime, Christmas has occurred and New Year's, and we're actually at the very end of January 1881.
Can we assume that Sinnett sent a reply to 12?
Oh yes, I'm sure he did.
In a relatively short time period?
Who knows?
Okay, it could have been
Who knows when
a few
it
weeks.
was.
Okay. All right. There is no fault on your part in the whole matter. I am sorry you should think I am attributing any fault to you. If anything, you might almost feel you had to blame me for giving you hopes without having the shadow of such a right. I ought to have been less optimistic, and then you would have been less optimistic in your expectations. I really feel as if I had wronged you. Happy, thrice happy, and blessed are they who have never consented to visit the world beyond their snow-capped mountains, whose physical eyes have never lost sight for one day of the endless ranges of hills and the long, unbroken line of eternal snows. Verily and indeed do they live in and have found their Ultima Thule.
Right. What is Ultima Thule?
I don't know.
It's on ancient maps. It was the northernmost part of civilization where anyone could possibly live. And as he's using it as a metaphor for where the adepts live in the far north reaches of beyond India into Tibet. So he says, how thrice happy are they who have never left this sacred. It's basically like Shangri-La. It's, if once they get there, why would they want to go back out into the hustle and bustle of the world? So yeah, he's saying, I've decided to do that, but I realize it's not going to be an easy endeavor, but I'm willing to do it. Those who have chosen not to are far happier in many ways than that I'm going to be. He realizes he's making a sacrifice.
Why say you are a victim of circumstances, since nothing is yet seriously changed, and much, if not all, depends upon future developments? You were not asked or expected to revolutionize your life habits, but at the same time, you were warned not to expect too much as you are. If you read between the lines, you must have noticed what I said about the very narrow margin left to me for doing as I choose in the matter. Despair not, for it is all but a matter of time. The world was not evolved between two monsoons.
Meaning 1 year.
Okay, my good friend. If you had come to me as a boy of 17, before the world had put its heavy hand upon you, your task would have been 20-fold easier. And now we must take you, and you must see yourself as you are, not as the ideal human image which our emotional fancy always projects for us upon the mirror.
All right, notice he said, if you had come to us as a 17-year-old boy, everything would have been so much easier because your head wouldn't be filled with all of this. As it turns out, Sinnett was actually, both Sinnett and Hume were pretty good candidates because neither one of them was very religious. We see from Hume's father that he was kind of a no-nonsense guy who was not given to, he didn't capitulate to authority. So there's no religious figure that's going to have any degree of control over him. And Sinnett's mother was only very vaguely religious. She didn't like some of the preaching of the priests in the Anglican Church, preaching that someone who, for example, sold a product on Sunday was going to be sent to hell to burn forever. She said, I don't want my children listening to this. So she actually didn't take them to church very often. Neither one of them had their heads filled with religious ideas. So, but if he had come to him 23 years earlier, he said, I could have helped you much, much easier, but we're going to do what we can as it is.
Be patient, friend and brother. And I must repeat again, be our helpful co-worker, but in your own sphere and according to your most mature judgment. Since our venerable Hobelgen has decreed in his wise foresight that I had no right to encourage you to enter a path where you would have to roll the stone of Sisyphus, held back as you surely would be by your previous and most sacred duties, we really must wait.
He's referring to his superiors. Hobelgen is a kind of generic term in Mongolia and Tibet for any very high spiritual leader.
I know your motives are sincere and true, and that a real change and in the right direction has come over you, though even to you that change is imperceptible, and the chiefs know it too. But they say motives are vapors, as tenuous as the atmospheric moisture, and as the latter develops its dynamic energy for man's use only when concentrated and applied as steam or hydraulic power, so the practical value of good motives is best seen when they take the form of deeds. Yes, we will wait and see, they say. And now I have told you as much as I ever had the right to say. You have more than once already helped this society, even though you did not care for it yourself, and these deeds are on the record.
Okay. I noticed he says, even though you did not, what was the...
You did not care for it yourself.
Yeah. They both expressed their discontent with the way the Theosophical Society was being operated. Mm-hmm. Now, KH, the masters in general, when they first approached HPB and said that they wanted a society formed, they didn't know what it would look like or exactly how it would operate. So it was very tenuous as to what direction it would take, and there was a lot of struggle for the first several years as to what was going to be the focus. It wasn't like it was all planned out from the beginning and it was just going to go step by step by step. It was like, let's figure it out as we go. And they're still trying to figure it out. So they're open to new ideas.
Good.
But nobody's real happy with it the way it is. Remember, in most of the branches, there was not much at all going on. So they're still trying to figure out something that's going to animate the whole system and get it moving. Right now, it's sort of at a standstill.
Nay, they are even more meritorious in you than they would be in anyone else, considering your well-grounded ideas of that poor organization at present. And you have thereby won a friend, one far higher and better than myself, and one who will, in the future, help me to defend your cause, able as he is to do it far more thoroughly than I can, for he belongs to the, quote, foreign section.
Now, this is an interesting thing. Once again, he throws in something that just kind of, you could miss it if you're not careful. He belongs to the foreign section. So that tells me he's not Indian and he's not Tibetan. And
this other chief, though, that he's talking about.
Probably isn't even Asian. In fact, I suspect that possibly the Mahachohan may be either European or of a Europeanized ethnic group. Olcott remember I said that there was a period of time around 1882 when he was able to do wonderful healings for more than a year. One of the people he was working on all of a sudden got a vision of an individual, and he described him to Alcott, and he was astounded. He said it sounds exactly like a very high Mahatma adept whose portrait I received, a sketch or painting of what he looked like. He was pale skin, blue eyes, light color hair, and had European features. And he kind of intimates that it may have been the Mahachohan. He doesn't say it in so many words, but obviously there is one of the higher ones that is not apparently of Asian descent. Just kind of an interesting observation.
Very interesting. Foreign section. And that's probably not referring to the Brotherhood of Luxor in Egypt.
I don't think so, because they are not likely to have European features and be blonde and blue-eyed.
They'd be Middle Eastern. What foreign? I believe I have laid down for you the general lines on which we wish the work of organizing the Anglo-Indian branch to proceed. The details must be left to you if you are still willing to help me. If you have anything to say or want to ask any questions, write to me and I will always answer your letters, but ask for no phenomena for a while, as it is only such paltry manifestations which now stand in your way. Yours ever truly, K.H. This is interesting. So now the adepts are taking on the idea of the Anglo-Indian branch themselves, and it's almost like they're pushing it forward and asking the Europeans to help them, even though it was the Europeans' idea in the first place, or a request to create the Anglo-Indian branch.
Well, they're getting excited about the possibility of this working, because, like I said, as it was, the Theosophical Society was kind of like dead in the water. Not exactly, but Alcott was working his tail off, creating branches here and there, and as soon as he created a branch, it would thrive for a few weeks, and then it would go into decline and stop being very productive. So they were looking for some new impetus, something that would vitalize everything. Okay. That will wrap it up for today's session. Next session, we will start with letter 14A. There's actually a 14A and a 14B. So this is going to be interesting, because I'll give you a little bit of a teaser here. We're going to hear from one of K.H.'s chelas.
Oh.
He had asked him, K.H. had asked him to write a letter to Sinnett explaining the point of view of their Asian chelas to this proposal and to what was going on in the Theosophical Society and how they perceived it. And it's quite interesting, their point of view. So we'll look forward to that in our next exciting episode of Session 10.
Sounds good. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.